Welcome to the studio. It's Froyle here. I'm so glad you've joined me. I'm pretty excited about today's video because I want to share some home truths with you. I've been jelly printing for a few years now, and there are some tips that I think would have been really helpful to know when I first started. Sometimes we jump into these painting techniques and we pretty much hope for the best. And that's a great way to start, even if you're stumbling along. But I'm going to share with you 5 of my top tips that will really help you if you're beginning and starting on the gel printing process, or if you're having a few issues. Also, there's a 6th number, which is going to be a bonus, so hang around for that. Number 1 is how much paint. Now, when I first started jelly printing, I was already creating massive big paintings, beautiful thick acrylic artworks that I was exhibiting and selling. I would literally pour the paint onto the canvas, thick and chunky. The bigger the better. I absolutely loved it. So when I turned my hand to jelly printing, I had a bit of a struggle not putting too much paint on the plate. I actually still have that struggle. It just seems to be my personality. I'm just all out there putting everything on the plate. And it's not always the best option when you're printing to have it really thick with too much paint. So how much paint do you need on the plate? Well, you need enough to cover the surface of the area so that you can create a nice even print. I like to place 3 dots on the plate and then roll it out evenly from there. But this is just a place to start. You don't have to do it like this. This is just what I'm doing at the moment after a few years of learning the hard way. I've tried to get those dollops smaller and smaller so that the paint gets even across the plate. It just works better, it covers well, and it takes a better print. If you stick a great big blob in one area, even if it's the top or the bottom of the plate, it's going to roll out, but it's not going to be even. So I find putting it like this, it just works a little better. Now, you'll get better with more practice, and over time you'll get a feel for how your gel plate's working, how much is too much and how much is enough for a good even print. But definitely don't let it stress you. This is one of my first ever gel printing videos, and I'm basically doing everything wrong. I've got way too much paint. I am slapping it all over that gel plate. It's going everywhere, and even my brayer, I bang it down, I don't put it up the right way. But I took print after print, and look how beautiful the prints turned out. I want to encourage you that if you're stumbling along and you don't know what you're doing, that's okay, because we all start that way. You will get better, you will understand the process, and more experience means you'll have more understanding with what you're doing. Don't give up before you've even really given it a good try. When I first started, because I was doing those beautiful big paintings, I looked at the process and just went, yeah, nah. It's way too small, it's way too limiting, and I bought a gel plate. It sat in my cupboard for years and years and years. And it's only been in the last few years that I've pulled it out and decided, you know, this is actually quite an amazing way to create art. I think it's because my lifestyle's changed. I'm not doing the big exhibitions that I used to do. I'm not doing the big paintings. And what I'm finding now is I can get the same creative expression in a smaller space and with far less materials. Now, number 2, what paint can you use on the gel plate? Well, what have you got? Because I find we tend to hoard up paint brands and different colours in the back of our cupboard. Have a little dig, pull them out, see what you've got. I really like using the Liquitex Basics. It's a good paint. It goes on the plate well. It's a more affordable price, although there's some really nice colours in the muted range of the Professional series. I know I have to have 1 or 2 of those as well. And if you want the Rolls Royce of paints, God bless America, golden paints. then you might just need to get some of those. I've got a whole heap of the little bottles because in beautiful New Zealand here it's really expensive. The benefit of the golden paints is the high pigment load really pulls that paint up off the plate, especially if you've got a ghost print or you've got paint that's stuck there that's being stubborn. A good roll over with a strong pigment load of golden paint pulls it up. Absolutely beautiful. But recently I've been experimenting with metered paints. They're on the cheaper end of the spectrum, and man, I'm telling you, they've been working really well. They're beautiful and buttery. They're little tiny tubes, so it's a lot easier to put out little amounts of paint. I've noticed myself being able to do it a lot better with the smaller tubes. I know. It's a much more cost-efficient brand, so if you're just starting out, it might be an idea to try them. It's a recent find. I'm still experimenting with them, but so far I've found them beautiful and buttery. They pull off the plate really well and they roll out really easily. They're working great. I bought the 100 color pack and I'm just loving it. It's $2 a tube, baby, which it should be because they're really tiny, but they've got an incredible range of colors. So if you don't want to mix your colors and you want to just open the tube and put them out, really easy for that. Now in the acrylic paints, I use both the full body and the fluid paint. I've also used the spray inks on the plate, but you do have to wait for these to dry. You can use acrylic markers on the plate, and there's so many different brands and styles and paint nibs. You can draw with them, you can create mark making with them. It's really absolutely endless. I did try the alcohol inks on the plate. They worked really well too, and all of these different mediums create a different response. They have different drying times and they create completely different types of prints. Now the alcohol inks will stain your plate, so if that's going to freak you out, don't use them, but they are another incredible medium that has beautiful results if you have a little play and try them out. You can use watercolors, you can use watercolor crowns. In fact, I'll use any water-based medium or paint on the plate because I like to experiment, I like to mix it up, and what's the worst thing it can do? It can only not work. And we have ways of fixing prints that don't work. I haven't tried any oil-based paints or mediums because I don't have any for a start. I'm impatient enough to wait for the acrylic paint to dry. I definitely have no patience to wait for oil-based paints. So I don't have any experience to tell you about whether or not they're good or bad on the plate. Haven't used them, but I've used just about everything else. Now the amount of paint that you do put on your gel plate will create different types of prints. So if you use a thin layer and pull it up straight away, then you've got more of a print making type of print. If you use thick layers, you add more water, you add spray inks, you go crazy, then it's going to have more of a painterly effect. Number 3, don't be afraid to experiment. Now, when I first started with jelly printing, I was a little scared about somebody said you should do this and someone said you shouldn't do that. And when you don't know, you just don't know. But I want to encourage you to not be afraid to experiment. You're making art. You're supposed to make mistakes. It's part of the creative process, and it's the only way you can learn. The amount of paint, the type of paper, the layers that you use in your printing, all of these variables create different possibilities, and depending on what you're trying to create and what you want the outcome to be, you have then different parameters of what you're going to choose to create your prints. But who is it that says you shouldn't do this and shouldn't do that? Nah. Give it a try. Okay, if you put too much paint on the plate, so what? It oozes over the side, wipe it up. It creates a beautiful painterly effect. Trust me, it works. If you don't put enough paint on the plate, then when it pulls up, you've got patches. It's a background. You can use it again to create another print. If you pull something up too soon and it hasn't dried on the plate and it tears, oh well, it tears. It's only paper. It's only paint. You can try again. You can use it for collage and you'll learn something. Next time, I know you're going to wait a few more minutes for that print to dry so it doesn't tear again. It's the only way to learn. It's mileage under the brush, baby, and you just have to do it. You have to try, step out and see where it goes. Now, if you want a one pull type print and you're layering up the different colors on your plate, then you're going to have to align it with alignment tool. But if you're not worried about that, then you can put print down, pull it up, put another print down. It all depends on what you want to accomplish. But when you're first starting out, you really don't know what the heck you're doing. So you just have to try all these things and see what works and see what you like the best. On that note, number 3.2 is not all your gel prints are going to be successful. Sorry to burst your bubble, that's just not all going to work. Sometimes your color choices are poor, or like I said, it sticks on the plate because you didn't wait long enough for it to dry, you pulled it up too quick, it tore, or it just didn't work. Meh. It happens to all of us. We all end up with a pile of prints that don't look so good, but don't despair because there really is hundreds of ways to fix them, create more layers, turn them into collage pieces. Don't throw anything away. Put them in a box that says, "Not happy, Jan." And then come back to another day when you're feeling a little inspired and have another go. Or else wait for a few months down the path when you've learned a little bit more, experimented with some more techniques, come back to it and then see what you can do with the prints, because we're always learning and growing and developing. If I look back at that video that I just showed you, one of my first ever gel printing videos, oh my gosh, I look at that and go, oh man, what are you doing? I've learned so much more in technique and style. I'm so much more refined now. I do things properly. Nah, not really. But you learn and grow and develop. So don't be too tough on yourself. You're going to have some jelly prints that basically just stink. Put them aside, come back to them another day, and let's see what we can do with them then. There's always a way. Number 4, choose the best gel plate that works for you. Not all gel plates are created equal. Now, when I first started jelly printing, I had a friend who was running an art space and she was doing art journaling classes, and I wandered along to have a look and was just like, yeah, I don't know, man. But I watched what she was doing and I bought a Gelli Arts gel plate. Now, that's the brand I bought. I didn't actually do anything with it for years, but that's all I knew at the time. And when I started getting more into jelly printing, I bought another Gelli Arts because that was what I originally found. I didn't even realize that there was different types for different styles of printing until I heard some people saying that their plate wasn't working. Apparently, the Speedball gel plate is specifically designed for gel printing inks. So if you're using acrylic paints on that gel plate and it's not working very well, meh, it'll be the plate, it won't be you, because it's designed for a different specific type of art making. I know, right? Who even knew? I just thought all the gel plates were the same, but they're not. Also, the size can be really important. I bought an 8x10 plate when I first started, and I was using a lot of copy paper, and the other papers, some craft papers, they were all cut to that size. So it worked really well. But in the last few years, when I've been experimenting more, I've been using a different type of paper, so I changed to a 9x12 plate. Absolutely loving that plate. And then I had to get a 12x14 plate because I had to go a little bit bigger. Libby's got the really big one, so I'm like, oh man, I might have to get one of those one day. That one's so big you could roll on it. I do also have the 5x7 plate, but yeah, I barely use it. Maybe a few times, not much, because I don't tend to work smaller. But if you do work smaller, then that's the size that you need. Really, if you're asking me what size gel plate to get the one that's going to suit your needs. What paper are you working on? What size do you like to work with? If you really like to be adventurous and work bigger, then save up and buy the big one. Or else you might be making cards or smaller miniature pieces, so you might only want the 5x7. Depends on what you want to create. They can get a little expensive, especially in the bigger sizes from the brand names of the gel plates, but they are a really good quality and they last a long time, so it's quite a good investment. I still have my original one and it's been like 8 or 9 years since I first bought it. It still works perfectly fine. I'm just wanting a different size now. You can buy cheaper brands of gel plates, although I don't know what they're like. I haven't tried them. Pretty sure I might one day give them a review and have a little look, but at this stage, pretty happy with the plates I've got. And of course, you can make your own. I haven't made any myself because I'm just too lazy, but you can find recipes on the internet, on YouTube here. I know you could easily find how to make gel plates, quite simple. Doesn't sound very difficult, you just got to make the effort. So if you want a bigger size plate and you don't want to spend hundreds of dollars, then it might be a good idea to actually make your own. Now, when it comes to storing the gel plate, it does say in the instructions here somewhere that you should leave it in the original clamshell that it comes in, that plastic covering that's around the gel plate, but you don't want to leave the acetate film on top of it, because when you're storing it, it could get bubbles on it, and if it gets bubbles on it, then they're imprinted into your gel plate and it's really hard to get them out. It does say to put a piece of paper on your gel plate and put it in the clamshell like that, but I pretty much leave mine lying around on the table because I'm using it all the time. I'm printing most of the time, either for a video or for myself or for my Patreon packs. I'm always printing something, so mine sit around on the table. Recently, I bought this acrylic chopping board to put it on because I started experimenting with techniques that required a much longer drying time. And being the patient person that I am, I had to move it off the table and get another plate so I could keep working and keep printing. And I found by putting them on the acrylic chopping board, it was easy to move them to the side, keep printing, keep me happy. Of course, you can use Perspex or glass, and I've asked other people where they've gotten their Perspex pieces from, and they had hardwares that chopped them to size. I didn't find a hardware that was that helpful, so I just bought the chopping boards already to the size that I wanted. There's always a way, if you just want to push through and find it, to enable you to really set up an effective workspace. I find being able to move my gel plates out of the way, put them to the side so they can dry nicely, then I can keep working on other things on my table. It just works well for what I want to do. Now, I had a question from my Facebook community. Oh, and on that note, if you want to join my Facebook group, you have to answer the 2 admin questions. They're really not hard. What do you like to create and what do you struggle with? I mean, it's not deep. You can just put one word, but by answering the question, we know you're a human, you're not a spam bot, and the door opens. If you don't answer the admin questions, it just doesn't. It's really not hard, but Libby was asking me to mention it to you because she doesn't like denying people entrance, but you have to answer the question. So, one of the fabulous girls in the Facebook group asked me a question about, do you have to season the gel plate before you use it? Now, this is a really interesting question because recently I bought a new one. When I was experimenting with the technique, putting the paint on the plate and spraying it with water, the brand new gel plate beaded up really fast and it was absolutely perfect for creating this technique. I was using this technique for one of my mixed media classes and it was amazing because it was a brand new plate and it seems to come with some kind of mineral coating on it that makes the paint bead up. Now, if you've got a brand new plate and you're finding it's a little funky and it's kind of not printing properly, just give it a moment. Run a few prints through it, do like a full color, 1 color print on the plate, pull it with some some paper, do maybe 5 or 6 and get it going, just so you can activate that plate and get all that kind of mineral coating off it. It worked perfect for the technique I was doing. I absolutely loved it. And when I was alternating between my older gel plate, oh man, that didn't work so easily for that technique because it didn't have that particular coating on it. But it's really harmless. It just requires a few prints to roll on, pull it off, and you're away. Which is pretty easy to do, right? Because once you start printing, you do get into a little bit of a frenzy, and all of a sudden, the floor around you is covered with amazing textured papers. Now, number 5, what type of paper should you use? Well, when I first started, I was using copy paper because it's really cheap. And then I started using some Chinese rice paper, or Japanese rice paper. It was from like a cheap shop, and it was a whole packet, and it worked really well, but it was really thin, and because I was heavy-handed with the paint, it tore really easy. So I had to learn very fast how to keep that paper from tearing. Not a bad lesson to learn, really. I was also using some ordinary tissue, and you do have to have a very light layer of paint if you're using ordinary tissue. Now that I'm really fancy, I use wet strength tissue, and you can leave the wet strength tissue on for hours. You can build up incredible multiple layers. You can even leave the wet strength tissue overnight to dry completely, so the next morning you can pull that print off. I know, I love it. I love the moment I found the wet strength tissue. Now, some people say it's too expensive, and that might be the case, but for me, it's worth it because I print so much and I experiment so much, and I really like the fact that it doesn't tear. You do need to use something strong and durable that's got the resistance to pull that print up off the plate. Now, I did a whole video on different papers and resistance and absorption, so have a look at this video if you need some more information about paper. I'm also putting a playlist together of beginner's guides for jelly printing, so I'm going to do a few of these videos touching on some different areas, because my Facebook community came back to me with so many questions when I asked them what should I talk about that we're going to have to do a few videos. I can't answer all the questions in just one. Now, you can of course use paper packaging. I love using paper packaging, craft paper, scrapbooking paper, music sheets, recycled books, cardstock, tissue, kitchen paper, paper towels. You can print with so many different types of paper. Put it on your gel plate and see how it comes out. Some types of paper, like the paper towel, will actually leave a print on your plate, and that's really cool. Paper packaging tends to be a little endless. It turns up all the time at my house, so it's really good to use, especially if you want to experiment, or you're using thicker paint, or you don't want to use up your good paper. It's really nice to have good fancy paper, but you don't want to buy expensive paper if you're then too scared to use it, because that's defeating the purpose. You have to allow yourself to experiment, to play, to mess it up, to have another go. So don't limit yourself by getting some expensive paper and then not using it. You'd be better off using just copy paper. At the moment, I'm loving this Japanese sketch rice paper pad. I saw Elizabeth St. Hilaire using this, and I tried it and I love it. But the thing is, with creating art, not just jelly printing, but any art, you change, you develop, you grow, you change, and you try different ideas. You see somebody doing something and you go, I'm going to try that. You try that for a while, and then you see something else and you try that. So you don't have to be limited. Today you might like these particular colors or this particular paper, and in a month's time you might like something else because you've seen someone else doing something and you want to try it. That's the way we learn. That's the way we grow, and that's the way to really expand your creativity. Now, how long does the paper stay on the plate? Oh, I know. I get this question all the time. Well, where do you live? Is it summer or is it winter? At the moment, it's a little fresh in beautiful New Zealand, but I know that it's summer on the other side of the world. So if it's really hot, it's going to take a lot less time for the paper to dry on the plate and you can pull it off quicker. But if it's really cold like it is here right now, you might need a little more drying time and you might need a little encouragement like using a fan. I'm loving this little fan right now because it's helping my acrylic paint to dry on the plate so I can pull it off without it tearing. It also depends on how thick your acrylic paint's on that plate, or if you've used watery techniques or sprayed it with ink like hello, the way that I like to layer up these prints. They do take a fair amount of drying time. Sometimes I leave them overnight. Now what I have found is that you either want to put the paint on, put the paper on and pull it straight away, or put your layers on and the paint on, put your paper on and leave it until it's completely dry. Anywhere in between those two places of straight away or maybe the next day is going to cause your paper to tear, because if your acrylic paint is still wet, it's still going to stick to the plate. It's only going to come off the plate if it's dry and stuck to the paper. Yes, I've learned the hard way because I'm very impatient, and sometimes I can pull up a print and there's 1 or 2 spots left on the plate because those spots were still wet. So you will have to experiment with your drying times. If you feel the back of your paper and it doesn't feel damp, then it's going to be dry enough to pull up. And also you can have a little sneaky peek on the side of the print and see if it's coming up easy. If it's not, put it down real fast and give it a good rub so that it can dry a bit longer and then pull it up. Sometimes it's a little hit and miss, sometimes it's experimental, sometimes you're just too darn impatient and you want to see how the print looks. And I have done all of the above and much, much worse. So don't get worried if your prints aren't working exactly how you want, if they're tearing or pulling or getting stuck on the plate, because it is part of the learning process. You do just have to wait a little bit longer for them to dry and then they'll pull off the plate really easily. Now, the alternative to that is if it's drying too fast. Sometimes in the warmer climates and hot places, the acrylic paint dries so fast on the plate before you even get that last layer or the paper on and it doesn't pull up. Man, that's annoying. I don't have that as much, but I know it would be annoying. The last layer that you put on your gel plate has to be wet, because that's the layer that sticks to the paper and pulls the paper up off the plate. So if you're trying to put paper on a layer that's dry, it's not going to pull up your paint. You have to put another wet layer on. If you've got a few layers on your plate and your paint is dry and it's not going to pull up, then put like an acrylic medium over it that's got no color added to it, but it's going to be the wet surface that you need for all of those layers to stick to the paper. Now, when your paper does get stuck on the plate, and I say when, not if, because it will at some stage, I like to use just baby wipes to get anything off the plate, or a damp cloth works really well too. Give it a little rub, it will come off. If it's just paint, then you can put another layer of paint on there to pull that off the plate with some, I like wet strength tissue. Glassine works really well for that too. It pulls all those bottom layers up that are still stuck on that plate. And using golden, especially any of the transparent colors, highly pigmented, they will pull those bottom paint layers up really well. I love doing that. But if you've got paint still stuck on your plate and it's being difficult, masking tape or packaging tape, put that on the plate. That picks up the paint really well. You can also put a thin layer, especially the golden paint, on the plate. Put down your paper that's not going to tear and leave it overnight. Come back the next day and pull it up, and it should have dried so entirely that all those bottom layers will come up. Now, if it's still sticking, then you're going to have to just give your plate a good clean. Baby wipes, a damp cloth, maybe a tiny bit of mild soap will help get that paint off. I just like to spray it with water because water will always loosen up the acrylic paint, and give it a good rub. If it's not coming, a bit of elbow grease will help. You can also put some baby oil or mineral oil on a soft cloth and rub it on your gel plate. I did this recently. Baby, she came up so clean. It got up so much grime from in the plate. It was amazing. It worked really well. Baby oil is your best friend if you really want to give your plate a good deep clean. Now, number 6, which is the bonus number, what do you do with your hundreds of gel prints? I see this question all the time in my group and in other groups because the thrill of making the print is so endless, and the possibilities and the creative expression. But there you are with mountains and piles of prints. What are you going to do with it? I asked my beautiful Facebook group what they thought, and they gave me some great answers. Personally, I like to make mixed media collages. I do beautiful jelly print collages on paper, but also I love making them on canvas as well. I also love creating what I call jelly print paintings, which is a mix of using an image transfer and pouring paint. Looks absolutely magnificent. And I have been known to create some fabulous little miniature collages. Really love making the miniature collages because they make really good gifts. So when I asked my community what they like to make, I got such a huge response. It was fantastic. We have some beautiful cards, magnets, bookmarks. Libby creates beautiful bowls with her jelly prints, using them to decorate. They're absolutely amazing. Stickers, washi tapes, art books of all sizes, small ones, big ones, and of course then you can go into art journals of different types, art journals, junk journals. I like to put my jelly prints into my art journal because I love being able to look back and see the techniques I was using, or to see some of the colors I was using, and to remember how the heck I did that. So putting it in an art journal is just like creating a treasure trove of ideas. I love doing that. Some of the girls make earrings and jewelry. How amazing is that? Postcards, gift cards, or gifts of all sorts. Covered boxes, Christmas tags, wrapping paper. Did I say notebooks? Think I did. Anyway, it's quite an endless list of amazing things you can create with the incredible jelly prints. I think the biggest takeaway that I'd really like to leave you with today is to not be afraid if you're just starting out, and if you're beginner and you're kind of scared. We all started that way. You don't know what you're doing, but you have to at least try. Use what you have, develop your art techniques, and there's always so many possibilities. Jump into a group. It doesn't have to be mine. It can be someone else's. See what other people are doing, because that's going to inspire you as well, especially when you're learning. And baby, don't give up. You will get better. Your prints will develop more. They'll be amazing. And in a few years' time, you'll be telling me what to do. I just know it. Thanks for joining me today. I really hope I've inspired you and pushed you on to keep developing your jelly printing techniques. Keep making those beautiful, amazing artworks. Keep learning, stretching, and growing. Now, I will leave you with the playlist for my beginner's guide for jelly printing. It just might help encourage you, and I'll see you next time in the studio.